So welcome everyone to our quarterly open houses, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Arabel Lebrusan. I'm one of the founding members of Luxury and also the creative director and managing director of Lebrusan Studio. I've been talking about ethics in the jewelry industry for donkey's years, around 15 years now, and it's a pleasure to host the open house today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Fair Luxury for those of you who doesn't know it that well. You can see some new faces, so it's just a bit of a recap. We usually describe ourselves as a collaboration, a community. Fair Luxury is a collaboration of jewelry industry change makers with a vision for a responsible and sustainable future. The pathway to a responsible business is complex and challenging, and Fair Luxury purpose is to share collective experiences and to inspire and inform other professionals to take positive steps towards a sustainable industry. So we convene, providing spaces and forums for learning, debate and networking like today. So thanks for being here. We inform, sharing a broad range of viewpoints, information and opportunities to learn. We learn ourselves, definitely, by sharing, by listening, which is quite important, questioning and debating to collaborate for better solutions. And we empower, providing access to information and people that enable change. And hopefully we inspire, hopefully after today you feel a little bit more inspired to create change in a better future. You can find more information about us in the Fair Luxury website. Ruby, would you be so kind to add it to the chat? And also we're on Facebook and we have a forum where you can also have conversations with each other. So a little bit about today, just some housekeeping rules. Today, our open house is about sustainability. There's a circular economy model in the context of the jewelry industry. And today we have Danielle, who's going to be our speaker today. She's going to be speaking for 20 minutes, around 25 minutes. And then after that, we're going to open the session for questions. So if you have any questions that arise throughout the presentation, just type it down in the chat, and then at the end Ruby will be bringing those questions up and we can start conversing. I also have a backlog of questions as well to fire at Danielle. This session is recorded and we will afterwards put it in our YouTube channel for the people that couldn't come today to be able to access it. And a little bit about Danielle. So thanks, Danielle, for being here. Danielle Keller Aviram has spent her career working primarily with jewelry-related organizations and businesses, including SIPJO, RJC, Fairmind, and Jewelry Industry Summit, developing and implementing their sustainable and circular action plans and strategies. Simultaneously, she's been busy writing about sustainable jewelry and fashion for blogs and magazines such as JCK and Rappaport. She has delivered a number of lectures and workshops on sustainable jewelry at the London College of Fashion, Kolding University in Denmark, and Notre Dame University in Beirut. And we thought it would be really, really keen to bring circularity, which is a word that we keep on using, hearing about, that is to really see how can we integrate those concepts within the jewelry industry. You know, we always talk about recycling and metals, and in our industry, in a way, gold is never thrown away. So we thought it would be really inspiring to get someone who knows more about how the whole model works and to present it today. So all to you, Danielle. She's going to share a presentation. So just some technical bits, all yours, Danielle.
Okay, 1 second. I hope now you can see the presentation. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be part of this open house series that I've been following for quite a while now. And thank you, Fair Luxury, for giving me the stage to talk about this topic. And thank you, Arabel, for all your guidance and support. So just a quick sentence about who I am. I'm coming from a jewelry design background, but in recent years, I've been working around sustainability and circularity specifically, supporting mainly jewelry related organizations and companies around the world. encouraging them to take bolder steps towards sustainable future. And this presentation would focus on what does it mean, circularity or the circular economy? What are the basic guidelines when we're talking about this topic? And what does it actually mean for you as a jewelry designers or jewelry makers or any stakeholder that you are as part of the jewelry supply chain? So we produce, probably most of us, and also consume, which is probably all of us, in a really, really fast pace these days. Since the Industrial Revolution, we were educated and actually got used to using things for a really short time. So we make materials, transform them into products, use them for a certain amount of time. Some of the products are used for less than an hour, like a plastic bag that you get in the supermarket or buy at the supermarket. And some products for maybe a bit longer, few years, like a washing machine. But then once this product is broken or there is any issue with that, we don't really know what to do with that. So we throw it into the garbage. So this leads to a lot of waste that countries all around the world are accumulating during years and years. And in recent years, many countries started to understand that this waste doesn't go anywhere. It actually stays. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't evaporate into the air. So just quick few anecdotes. So every second, the truck full of clothes and textile is going to landfill. Every minute, a truck full of plastic waste is going to landfill. And the same goes to any waste we're dealing with. So food waste, e-waste, and any other product we use and consume. China recently stopped receiving containers of waste from Western countries, and many other developing countries are following this strategy because they understand that the solution that a lot of countries are now using of putting their garbage somewhere else would mean that at some point they would need to deal with their own garbage, but also with other countries' garbage as well. So it raised the question of how we should actually deal with this problem of waste being bigger and bigger and growing, since the insert back of resources to our supply chains or to our life is not actually increasing as well. And this is where the circular economy model is coming into picture. So looking beyond the current conventional perception of take, make, and waste, extractive industrial model. So the circular economy is aiming to redefine growth, focusing on positive society, benefiting people, planet, and profit all at the same time, because they are all equally important, and trying to contribute to a fruitful future of an ongoing system. So building economic, natural, and social capital all at the same time. So now going back a bit more to jewelry. So the diagram that you see here is a basic diagram that I created a few years ago of the conventional jewelry supply chain. And as you see, it's quite linear. So we mine materials, we process them, then we either manufacture them into components or basic materials. Then there is the design and prototyping phase. It doesn't matter exactly if the order is correct, but in the end, it's true that gold or diamonds or any other material that we might work with doesn't go into waste, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it reinserts back into the system. So there is still new mining going on every day that we are living on Earth. And this ongoing mining and ongoing processing is leading to high CO2 emissions that we would talk a bit more deep through the presentation. At the same time, mining, as you can imagine, is just giant holes in the ground that are spread all around the globe. In most situations, these mines are not rehabilitated afterwards. So we are just left with a lot of, in most situations, ecosystems that are interrupted by these mining operations, even if the mines are not operated anymore. Of course, the usage of water and chemicals that can sometimes impact communities that are living hundreds of kilometers from mine sites. So it's not just that all of these impacts stay where they are, it's actually all interconnected. In 2018, the World Gold Council measured, they published a report about gold mining emissions. They estimate that every ton of gold, of newly mined gold, requires almost 33,000 tons of CO2 emissions. So for every ton of newly mined gold, there is 33,000 tons of CO2 emissions associated with. And this is just taking large scale mining into account. So add on top of that SMEs, and we are reaching an even higher number. When we are talking about recycled gold, the numbers of emissions are much lower. So it's around like 4,500 tons of CO2 emissions compared to 1 ton of gold, which is quite a big difference. Not strong at math, but who is can do the calculation. This is just talking about CO2 emissions. So if you calculate all other impacts like water usage and pollution, biodiversity, land use, a lot of other parameters, it's accumulating to quite a big impact. So what does it actually mean, circular economy, or what are the main principles? So the circular economy looks on every product or on every industry from a completely different point of view. And this model can be applicable to any product that we can speak about. It means that we see the value of materials and processes as an opportunity to save the value of these components as a never-ending cycle. And I think it's even more relevant when we are talking about materials that we are working with that has a lot of economical value on top of that. So the main principles are focusing on eliminating waste and pollution, creating an ongoing material and products flow, sourcing energy from renewable resources, regenerating natural systems, separating biocycle and technical cycle. It is less relevant to jewelry, but in general, it's really big part of the circular economy model, and trying to work on monomaterials. So this is a model that I created based on the circular economy basic principles, and this is trying to reflect the general model onto the jewelry supply chain and trying to think about how this would translate into real life for the jewelry industry. So at this point, the circular economy would actually question, do we need mines as we know them in the 21st century? And the same goes to any production process that leaves waste behind. If we compare the conventional jewelry supply chain that I showed you a bit before to the circular jewelry model, the story doesn't end with retail operations. There is an ongoing opportunity to reuse and repurpose materials with a lot of different opportunities. And we would go a bit deeper to the different strategies a bit later in the presentation. So minerals, which refers to metals and stones in this case, are, besides the fact that they are economically, have a high economical value, are chemical elements that are mixed in the soil. And after extraction, they cannot be reinserted into the soil because of all the processes that are done to separate them from the soil. So it means that every mineral that is ever mined from the earth is still living with us above ground. And the McKinsey report from 2020, it was published a bit before the pandemic started, estimates that we are talking about 190,000 tons of above ground gold that currently exist. So gold in this case, but it refers also to diamond and precious stones and semi-precious stones and other metals. They are all living with us above ground. So if we actually have so much gold above ground, do we need to mine new gold every day? The gold industry currently consumes between 4,000 to 4,500 tons of gold annually. So if you calculate it, basically, we could have decades of gold with everything that we have above ground. And it actually is even stranger when it's so easy to recycle gold, which I'm sure some of you probably know from your own jewelry making works. So it's quite a basic process that has been done for decades and centuries and even longer, with casting and melting metals quite easily. But still, mining is continuing to happen every day. Having said all of that, I believe that we as people that make jewelry by ourselves have a lot of responsibility. There are now a lot of researchers that predict or that around 80% of the environmental impact of a product is decided on the designer's table. So how we make a product, from which materials, from which techniques, how we combine different materials from one another, can have a tremendous impact on the sum up of the environmental impact of a product. So thinking about circularity or about the circular economy model as part of product planning and designing can actually determine the end result or the lifespan of these materials in the end. And this is just to give you an example of how a different industry addresses eliminating waste from production. So today, any production process uses chemical, water, electricity, and many other resources. And in most situations, it is not based on renewable resources, and it's not done in closed loops. So it means that all of these resources are either finite and cannot be reused, or there are a lot of outcomes that impact the environment afterwards. So this means that a lot of toxic waste is being left in the end and can also leak to the outside surroundings. The same goes to building production facilities that are not based on renewable energy. And this means that all of these energy consumption also leads to high environmental impact. But the example that you see in the picture may be not super clear. It's from a factory, I think in Vietnam, but maybe I'm mistaken. It's called Cytex, and they are producing denim. So from a different industry, but just as an idea of how this model could go further. They understood that they have a lot of waste from mainly dyeing denim, which is quite a toxic and wasteful process. And this waste is in the form of sludge, so it's liquid and solid waste mixed together, and they can't really do anything with that. So as part of trying to think further about how they can minimize their waste, they used this machine and the sludge that they were left with to create building blocks. And from these blocks, they are building homes for people in the community that surrounds the factory and for people that are working in the factory. So it means that in the end, I think it reduced their waste in like 80–90%. So most of the waste was that. And it also could in the end had a lot of social benefits to the people that are working in the factory, but also to the community that was surrounded by the factory. So this community was left with no waste and also got other benefit from the factory being there. So again, another translation from my perspective of the circular model towards jewelry making. So there are a lot of actions that you can actually do in your atelier or factory in order to minimize your waste and hopefully lead to smaller environmental impacts. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of these strategies fit everyone. There is no one solution fits all. So there could be repair services offered to your clients or your customers. Hopefully this would extend the life of the products that they already have instead of buying new things. Repolishing jewelry that can ideally make your customers hopefully feel like they get a new item, but having an old item just reappreciated. And there are also a lot of other possibilities, like remanufacturing items that are broken, recasting things, recycling completely the materials. But it's just, I think, from my perspective, it's more opening your mind to a lot of different possibilities. So it's not that there is one answer fits all, and it's not that you need to do all of that, but it's more that every step would contribute to minimizing our industry's joint waste and hopefully the ongoing usage of these really precious materials that we are working with. So buying from your customers their old gold in return for like a voucher or any incentive would be a great step that maybe you can do. I don't know if it fits your business, but as I assume you already know, like gold doesn't lose its value. So if you recycled it, remelt it, remanufacture it, how you would want to call it, can already contribute a lot. And I think by encouraging customers in any way to reuse what they already have, I think also has a lot of economical benefits to both sides that makes the solution probably even more attractive to everyone. The last part of the presentation, I want to focus on few examples that I think from different brands that are doing interesting things, just to kind of like open up your mind. So this brand called Article 22, they are based in Vietnam and Laos, and they are creating unique and engaging items using a really special story that I think is so strong, and that it's hard to stay not emotional towards that. So what they're doing is they are partnering with artisans in Laos, and their first collection is called Peace Bum. It is handcrafted by traditional Laotian artisans from Vietnam War Sharpel and other debris. And each piece helps Mines Advisory Group, which is an NGO that is operating around that area, to clear unexploded ordnance, making land safe, amid providing new metal to artisans to craft more original new designs. So what they are actually doing is the artisans there, after the Vietnam War, they were left with nothing and they had to rebuild their life. So they started using the metals from bums that were around them and created pans and spoons and things like this. And at some point, two ladies from New York, if I'm not mistaken, traveled to Vietnam and Laos, and they found these artisans communities, and they were amazed by the beautiful things that they created. And when they found out that it was made from bombs, like it's not the actual explosive, but like the metal covers of the bombs, they were like, this can be, like, it's such a strong story. It's really hard to not stay emotional towards that. And they collaborated with them in order to improve and upskill their skills and making it jewelry items. And although it might not be fine materials or fine metals or luxury items, it is a really strong story that uses the materials in their local environment in a really interesting and unique way. Probably the most controversial topic around circular economy in our industry is referring to recycled gold and recycled minerals in general. And I'm sure there would be probably a lot of questions about that as well, because it's a key or a core element as part of the circular economy model. I think one of the biggest problems in this area is that if you would research what does it mean recycled gold for different organizations in our industry, you would get a lot of different results or a lot of different definitions. And this is part of the issue. So there is no united definition that means what does it actually mean recycled gold. There is no organization, association standard that certify all recycled gold to make sure that it's not involved in any negative aspects. And I think also some people that are against recycled gold or are pro supporting artisanal mining communities, then some of their issues that they raise are associated with the loopholes that are as part of the topic of recycled gold. So I think this issue of like not having any regulation and definition is a key element, because it leads to no action or not the right action that is done by our industry. But like, let's just first of all go over like what are the issues associated with recycled gold. So the fact that there is not enough transparency and traceability to prove that actually recycled gold is recycled gold. It means recycled gold in general means that this gold was used before in a product. So the time that you're getting the recycled gold, it means that it just passed through refining and not mined from earth. And it was previously used in a final product or a component, and then refined back to your working table. But now these days, because there is not regulations and legislations and any other kind of transparency and traceability, then it means that this gold can be smuggled from illegal mining and then re-enter a refining facility under the impression of recycled gold, but it can actually be newly mined gold in disguise. And actually the situation now with the fact that there is no standard or any organization that is promoting and reassuring recycled gold content could be a good step for our industry, in the sense that maybe this kind of organization should, at this time of age, should be established. And the last point is that I think there is a bit of miscommunication towards consumers. I don't know what you experience with your clients, but I think, first of all, most of them don't know that their gold could be easily recycled and that they could get money from that. And some even like good money if they own a decent amount of gold. And some of them might not be knowledgeable about the fact that gold doesn't matter if it's been melted 1 time, 10 times, 10,000 times, million times. It has the same quality and the same performance. Not like other materials from other industry that might have lower and lower quality materials as they've been recycled and reused. And this means that they might not be interested in buying a product that is made out of recycled gold, although for them it doesn't mean anything because it would have the same shininess, the same performance, the same strength. So all of these topics, I think it's on our industry's responsibility to address. And these are just 2 definitions that I summed up out of, I think there are 8 or 9 that I found. Who is interested, I can share with you a document that Christina Miller published, I think more than a year ago, with few definitions from different organizations. But I did a bit of research for this presentation specifically about few refiners, maybe, you know, Cooks on Gold, but a few other refiners that I know that are also working with recycled metals. So you can see some of their certifications that they are working with. And the main thing, as you can see here, most of them are working with similar certifications. Some of them are a bit more detailed, some of them are a bit less. But LBMA is the London Bullion Market Association. It has quite a strict and progressive good gold standard or something, good gold list. I don't remember the exact term. And they are also quite progressive in how they perceive recycled gold, but it's a voluntary standard. So if you're not under the standard, then you can declare that your gold is recycled, but there is no mechanism that can reassure that. Even the OECD due diligence mechanism doesn't really address this topic so much. And even ISO standards that you see here, 14,001 and 8,001 are also not super relevant towards recycled gold. The RJC code of conduct, I think, COC, refers a bit to recycled gold, but again, these are all voluntary mechanisms, and each one of them has a bit different definition. And I think all of these refineries are doing quite a good job. Some of them, like Cooks on Gold, it was actually quite hard to understand from their website what kind of certifications they are actually following. But I researched a bit and found that. The other 2 are a bit more detailed in their website and a bit more transparent in their website about what they are doing. But I think it's worth to ask your suppliers if they have any standards, what kind of standards they are using. Ask questions where the gold comes from which sources. I mean, like, is it all jewelry? Is it e-waste? Also worth to ask what kind of processes they are doing to refine the gold. Some refineries are trying to work with renewable energy, meaning that they have smaller environmental impact, or mixing or doing energy mix. So this whole has a big impact on the environmental impact of the materials that you work with. There are other suppliers that are working with recycled materials. These are just 3 that are quite big and I know of. There is VIPA, that are based in the UK, and I know that are also working with recycled content. Some of these suppliers also work with newly mined gold. So like C. Hafner, the German ones, they are working only with recycled fine metals, but the other two are working also with newly mined gold. So I think the main part is ask your supplier a lot of questions. And I think besides the fact that it would make you feel more secure, knowing where things come from and telling the story, and also understand better what things they are supporting, it would also help you understand the actual impact that your production has. Another topic that I want to address almost towards the end is recycled or repurposed stones. This is from Jared Holstein from De Amadeo, I think its name, the brand of his brand's name is. He's operating in the US. And again, like the area of repurposed or reused precious stones is the wild, wild west. There is not any regulation or any standard or any supervision toward that, towards what does it actually mean to have a repurposed stone. But again, like gold, like many other materials that probably you audience work with, these are materials that don't lose their value, their economical value, and of course don't lose their aesthetic value. Even if you use vintage stones that maybe has old cuts or old polish, this could be easily repolished using an expert and have a beautiful aesthetic and reflection, and like newly mined stones. And I think besides this fact, it also has a really interesting story, because if you compare it to gold or to any metal that is then being melted and casted again, and there is no trace of how it looked before, with stones, you can say that this stone was before set in something else, and it brings this kind of energy, or like this kind of sense that it was in a museum, in a ring that was owned by whoever 100 years ago, or I don't know. And I think these days also people are looking for this kind of authentic and interesting and a bit different vibe and story. And yeah, I have a lot more to say, but I feel we are under a bit of time pressure. So I will slowly...
Danielle, if you want, let's just do a few more minutes and then we wrap up and we open for questions. I'm sure people will have things to ask.
Okay, so as part of thinking about the circular model, we are also thinking about not just the end product and how it reaches our customers, but what happens afterwards. So what happens once this item is used by a customer. So I'm giving you an example also, again, unfortunately not from our industry, but a really interesting business model by a company called Jewellery. They are based in the UK, I think in London, and they are providing on-demand service of aftercare for luxury fashion items. At the moment, I think it's knitwear, bags, shoes, and belts maybe. And they are really like top art craft, magnificent Instagram page that I would recommend everyone that likes to see amazing handcraft to watch them. They are repainting, they are oh my god, sorry, my words slipped. They are doing a marvelous work around repairing and taking aftercare of luxury items, and they are really experts on that. And I think by offering these kind of aftercare services, their clients are using their products for a longer time. So instead of throwing them away, putting them in a thrift shop, I don't know what happens to a really expensive product that once it's broken or damaged, they repair it to a magnificent level, like it looks brand new, and this item can be used like new again, and this for sure expands the lifespan of the product to a longer time. Reselling, probably the hype circular strategy these years. So there are a lot of reselling platforms out there. I wanted to focus on Circa. They are based in New York, but they have offices around the world, in Europe and Asia as well. And they are focused on reselling diamonds, jewelry, and watches. So they have experts to actually evaluate the products, and they buy items and sell them as well. Some of the items they sell as a product. Some of the items they separate and sell the material separately. So it's just a really interesting, I think, to see that it reached a point where there is a need from our industry to do something specifically for our industry, because there are a lot of different elements with evaluating and reassuring the materials, like what's the actual value of the diamond, what's the actual value of the metals and the other stones and the watch mechanisms. So they are focused, and they have experts that are specified or specialized in evaluating these kind of items. And last, it's not really an example, it's just throwing an idea towards whoever of you that is focused on product developing, that a big part in reusing and repurposing materials is the fact that we, in the end, when we are looking about the product, usually it's made out of few materials, in the case of jewelry, and maybe in watches from many materials. And these materials are sometimes hard to separate, and it's really high intensity in labor, and sometimes it's not worth actually separating the materials. So you damage or break one material in order to earn the other one. So if you think while you design about the next life cycle of a product, how it would be easier to separate the different materials in order to actually reuse the materials to the maximum, then maybe you can lead to the point where you need not so complicated recycling processes and not so complex in like workload and time to actually separate them and use them to the maximum. So it's not actually happening now in our industry, but if you think about it, if you have a product that is mixed with different kinds of gold, or with silver and gold, or when you set a stone in a way that it's really set in a way that it's hard to separate the stone from the gold, then in most situations when this item would reach a point where it would need to be separated, the different elements, then one of the elements would probably be damaged to make the separation process more efficient and faster. So if you think about it while you actually design, maybe this would lead to a better reusing of these components and elements. I'm sure some of you have questions and confusions, thoughts. So if you want to approach me, also my contact details, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Danielle. That was brilliant, very informative as well. I just wanted to pick up on the last bits that you said, because that's the first thing that for me, I was like, what's this? Is the monomateriality. So it's all about keeping your material simple. And that makes me think about alloys, and in jewelry, by standard, by law, we have these alloys that are then mixed gold with something else. And I have this contradiction within me, because on one side I think, well, actually we should keep it more pure, but the fact, and not be so dependent in hallmarks, but the fact that there's hallmarks, as a jeweler, when you get a few products that are hallmark already, you know the law already because someone has tested it officially. So in a way, it's easier for us to combine those metals without the stress of like, am I mixing things that I shouldn't be mixing? So I just have this kind of balancing out of like, so is hallmark good then? I thought maybe we should kind of get over hallmarking. But yeah, the key thing with the monomateriality, I thought it was really eye-opening for me, the same as you were saying just now about disassembling and then how we construct things. So maybe instead of soldering, I mean, you mentioned it somewhere, maybe instead of soldering, we need to screw things.
Yes.
That really goes back to my kind of jewelry years in the bench, like learning all these really tiny screws and all these positive and negative and screwing things up, very much like watchmakers. But yeah, maybe that's something we should embrace more, because it is true that when we set something, I mean, it's happened to us many times also with customers, you're supposed to not, obviously you're very careful, but things can break, you know, and diamonds can crack, and you know, certain stones are quite soft, and there's all this care that you put into it, but it might be that the material, you know, is not as strong.
Yeah. I think, for example, sorry to interrupt, but I think, for example, like pavé. Yes. So it's magnificent. You see a surface full of diamond and sparkling gold, and it's beautiful. But separating this mix is almost impossible. And I saw in many situations that people are just banging with a hammer on the stones to break, because they're so, because they're small, they don't have a lot of economical value. So then in that sense, it makes more sense to just break them and reuse the gold, rather than cutting with a cutter every piece out that can take hours. So it's just an example. And in terms of like hallmarking, I think that it's a difficult question, because on one hand, yeah, working with pure gold might make all of our lives simpler on one hand. At the other hand, it would make our life more expensive for all of us. We would need to buy pure gold. We would need to sell pure gold. And also pure gold doesn't really fit today's production processes. We are able to do much more complex things because of technology, and we don't need this soft material that we could bend by hand, because we have a lot of tools and mechanisms to actually deal with that. And I think that in that sense, it makes our life easier, because we know from outside that things are assessed, and it's a mechanism that helps us feel secure. And I think it also helps our customers know what they have in hand. And then I think it also helps refining facilities deal with whatever old items that they get. So I don't think it's bad. I think it's more that we need to understand that in order to repurpose as much as possible, we maybe need to think, all of us, about how we learn to do jewelry, you know, that as you say, like it brings you back to the days where you were a jewelry student. I'm thinking about it all the time. You know, I learned 8 kind of setting stones in metal, but maybe, I don't know, maybe in the 21st century, we need to have 80 other ways of setting stones in jewelry. Like maybe this traditional way of setting stones fit like certain amount of stones, or like certain sizes or certain designs, but not everything. Maybe we should think about it otherwise, in another way. And
I hear you. Yeah, this that I think it needs to be regenerative by design. We need to think about by design, how do we change how we do things?
Yes. And maybe also not being afraid of using things that are damaged. I just read a few weeks ago that Pomeletto, the Italian luxury brand, they had a collection that is all they binded stones using gold. So like the Japanese repair technique that they repair ceramic with like this gold soldering. So they had a collection inspired by that. And all the broken stones were attached with this gold binding. So it's really an interesting, in general, I'm not sure that Pomeletto is like any brand to mention besides this interesting design concept, but this was interesting in my opinion, that maybe, you know, we need to think about also maybe the damaged materials that we have in our atelier doesn't need to go to waste. Maybe there is a way to also use that in a way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we just need to use also all these discarded stones. I'm gonna jump to something else, another type of question, because in this environment we've talked a lot extensively about small scale miners and our kind of job to support small scale miners in the industry. So the elephant in the room is how circularity could engage with human rights and redistribution of wealth. So in the case of the small scale miners, I don't know if you have something to say about this.
So I think this is the first question that I get from most conventional people from the industry, like not saying that it's a bad thing. It's like everyone tells me, you know, we are saving these small scale miners by providing them job with mines still operating. And I'm like, yes, that's true on one sense, but maybe if you would ask, sorry, all miners around the world, if they still want to be miners, I don't know if all of them would answer that they still want to mine now. And maybe, I don't think we don't have responsibility for them and their wealth. I think we definitely do. And if the industry as a whole decides to get rid of mining at all and move only to recycled minerals, then we have a responsibility for all these people that have been contributing and working and supporting our industry for centuries, probably. But I think it's a matter of maybe we need to, first of all, ask them if they want to do this, continue this job. And also maybe they would be interested in doing, I don't know, rescaling into something else. I have someone here in Berlin that has a sustainable jewelry business, and as part of her business, she opened an NGO that is operating in Uganda. And in the beginning, she was sourcing gold from them. And at some point, she decided that she wants to move to recycled gold completely. And she went to a trip there and asked them if they wouldn't be gold miners, what they would want to do. And most of them told her that they would want to be farmers. And she collected donations as part of the NGO and did re-education for the community for permaculture program for them. So now they actually grow their own food for themselves, and they're even able to quite fast sell their products to other communities around them. So I definitely think that it's something that if there is a transition, a big transition towards using recycled minerals, then this issue should be addressed as well, because it is a big part of how our industry operates. But I don't think that this should be the reason why we keep on mining.
Thank you for that. Ruby, do you want to open up to questions from the floor? I have many more, but I'm sure people want to voice their questions and their ideas.
Absolutely, yeah. So people feel free to keep hitting up the chat with your questions. But to begin with, I've got a couple that cropped up during your presentation, Danielle. The first is from Lisa, and the question is, do you know if there are any reports that look to see whether handmaking is less wasteful than casting in terms of energy, waste products, etc.?
So in general, there is not a lot of data about jewelry supply chain impact. It's quite hard. The current hype topic is CO2 emissions, which is like a hype topic around the world as a result of climate change. And there is barely any data about downstream the supply chain. So most of the data that you can actually find about the environmental impact of jewelry production is mainly around mining or extraction. So like tier 4, whoever, but about jewelry making, manufacturing, there is barely any data. So I can't really say anything precisely about that. I think though all of us have responsibility. I think the fact that there is no data doesn't mean that we can do whatever we want. I think that as people on this planet, this is how I at least believe or try to live my life. I'm trying to, wherever I can, to minimize my impact. So I think it goes hand in hand with how your atelier or like your workbench is set up. So maybe there are things that you can do, like even small steps that you can do in your own facility to minimize your environmental impacts. I hope it answers the question, Lisa.
That was actually it for questions that have come through during the presentation.
Can I fire away? So I have a question. Well, there's a question that we have from the team. Why isn't it already so circularity? Why is there not already a universally accepted model for tackling climate change?
Wow.
I mean, circularity is very much in the news. You know, cradle to cradle has something that has been, you know, 15 years ago when I was at uni doing my MA, we were already talking about this, you know, like waste is a flaw by design, but, you know, there is a lot of critics, and we've had a few conversations, you and me, about this, about circularity, because also all the energy that it needs, you know, in order to move to a circular economy in this endless cycle, we need to reuse, repurpose, and recycle, and that recycle needs huge amounts of energy. And somehow in this model, no one is questioning growth and economy. So the big question is like, you know, we cannot. Endless growth doesn't really exist. And sorry, I'm going a bit off piste with the bigger questions, but that kind of allows you to dream as well. Like, what are the big steps actually that we need? How do we educate our customers? How do we educate ourselves? Why can't we agree on a model? Oh, I'm also passionate about Doughnut Economics, and you know, it talks about very similar things about regenerative by design, distributive by design. Is very similar language. It just has a slightly different bits. So why cannot we just agree on something that we can follow? Any thoughts are welcome.
Okay, so you said a lot of things. I will try to address most of them at least. First of all, I don't have the answers for everything. I think we don't have, like, circular model is not adopted in a bigger scale because it's hard, and it's actually flipping the plate over. So it's changing everything. It's not just having a different energy running in your factory lines. It's everything. It means that we need to think about each product that we use, how it's designed, how materials are combined to one another, and thinking what would happen to this product when it reaches end of life, and not just after one end of life. What happens after 10 end of life? So, like, I don't know, you're wearing a t-shirt now. So what's going to happen to this t-shirt in 100 years from now after it passed through 10 users? And it's really a hard place to be, you know, when you think about it, especially when most of the people that actually plan how a product is designed and developed don't know where is the final line. Like, how does a landfill look like a sorting waste facility? What does it actually, how do they sort things? What do they do with products that are mixed with materials? So I think there is a big knowledge gap that needs to be filled by many stakeholders, and it's not just one solution. And this is why I also said at some point that I don't think all circular strategy fit all businesses. And I think it really depends on your customers, on you as a person, on your products, on what are the things that you're willing to do at this point, because most of the actions that you would need to do in order to adopt a more circular economy approach would mean working hard, and you would need to build it smart in order to make it economically viable. So yeah, it's not easy. It's actually going against the stream. And I think for people, dealing with change is really hard. And the topic about growth, I think it's the most complex to answer, because compared to like climate change or CO2 emissions or all of these things that maybe now are clearer to us because we see numbers and we see like, yeah, we have like these extreme summers in the UK, which we didn't have 30 years ago when you were younger, you know, like, so maybe it's easier to grasp, whereas you're talking about growth in a scenario where materials are endlessly used, and there is not enough data to actually say here or there, but from what we have above ground, and it's not just referring to minerals in our industry, I think it refers to plastics, to other kinds of metals, to wood, to textile, to every other product that we use that is not biodegradable. So it means that it can be composted in soil and water and air. All of these things in a good design and planning should be enough for reusing and remanufacturing onwards for, I don't know how much, because it's really hard to say with a lack of data and precise information. But like, if you think about the things you own around yourself, your own home, then it should potentially be, you know, solid furniture. I don't know, things around you that potentially should be in a way used for years and years to come.
Yeah,
I think it's more just I think it's more of how we perceive or like how we value these materials or these products, that quite soon or quite fast after a short amount of use time, we don't value them like the materials. They are so nothing to us. And it's not just us who is in this Zoom call, it's like us people, that it's easier to just discard them and imagine as if they are not existing, but they're actually existing. They are not disappearing.
thank you for that, and sorry for the thought-provoking question.
No.
So we passed the time. Just one really quick one that I want to say. That was a really big question, and I wanted just a very small question that is very active. People can act upon it. I had someone, Rebecca was with a hand up, but I think she's gone already. Rebecca, if you're there, I think she's gone. But my question was about the workshop, because yes, okay, the metal, we know we can recycle, but what about all the disposables on the workshop? You know, whether it's the pickle, whether it's the papers, whether it's the gas that we're using. Is there any useful tips that you can give us for people to start applying straight away? And I think with that, we can wrap it up. And thanks.
it's also hard, but I can tell you, I can maybe give you an example, and maybe this would open up, I think we need to think about all the way that we use and produce our items. So I know when I produced my jewelry a decade ago, that every stone and every piece of metal that I bought, I got in this Ziploc, small Ziploc bag that all the time it was written like what kind of material is in that, how much it weighs, and how much I need to pay. And every time that I went to buy these kind of materials, I would get a new bag. And at some point, I had to have like a storage unit for these bags, because it was like this enormous amount of bags that was used single time. And also in a lot of situations when I brought back things in these bags, I would get a new one when I would come and pick them up, instead of giving me the old one. Maybe put a sticker on that instead of writing. So I think maybe it's a way of like thinking, also not necessarily in like big step, how you change the whole industry to transform into only recycled content. I think it's too big of a mission for all of us, even together. But maybe it's like smaller things that you can do in your workspace. So maybe reuse your packaging when you pick up materials or products from polishing, from setting, from whatever. You reuse these materials, because there is no need for all these new, especially packaging things. This is just really, it's just for transforming an item from point A to point B. So this could be like one thing that I would say that could be easy. Ideally, thinking about the energy that you use in your workshop, maybe transforming into a more renewable mix. I assume that it's also available in the UK. And I think also now, not getting too much political or geopolitical, now with what's happening on more my side of Europe, I think it's a big like slap in the face for us, that maybe we should think about more localizing our energy, so it doesn't need to come from other countries that are now using this as a bargaining mechanism to do a lot of things that we may agree or disagree with. Maybe transforming into a more green energy could be a potential solution, especially now when I assume that also your energy prices are increasing, like here. So I think there is not, I didn't check it, but I assume that there is no much bigger of a difference transforming to a more green energy supplier. Another issue is that I assume that some of you that are making jewelry by hand, you use some kind of chemicals to clean jewelry. And I don't know what you do with your water, but I would recommend to reconsider what you do with your water. Maybe collect it and ask a chemical company that knows how to dissolve this kind of chemicals in a responsible way, because if you pour it in the drain, probably not the best environmental act to do. And maybe, I don't know what kind of chemicals you use, but maybe there is a way to reuse the used water, because there are some techniques that you can bring back the used water in a closed loop system. I'm not an expert on that, like what does it actually require from your atelier, but there are some technologies and techniques to not toss this toxic water into the regular water system. Yes, and I also think that we have a big responsibility to educate our customers to not be afraid of reusing and repurposing what they already have, or offering them items that are as beautiful and as aesthetically pleasing from recycled minerals. And I think by that, hopefully they wouldn't be so afraid from this.
Thank you very much. So that is all for us. Thank you very much, Danielle, for coming here today and explain us about circularity. And thanks everyone to show up. That is the first action to make change, showing up. So hopefully to see you next time. We'll keep you informed. Hopefully you have signed up to the Luxury newsletter. That's why you got the information about today's session. If you haven't, please do. The link is on our website. And hopefully to see you next time. Thank you very much for being here, and let's make some change happen. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.